Reforming the financial system is more important than the war against poverty and starvation, the movement to protect the environment, the struggle against pollution, the peace movement, the fight against drugs and racism, and the battle for social justice and welfare. Financial reform is more important than all these other problems for the simple reason that the current financial system is responsible, both directly and indirectly, for causing or at least exacerbating them.
What we focused in on in the United Kingdom was publicly created money. That is, what is it? What is publicly created money? Publicly created money is money created by the government of the day, debt-free. That is money which does not have to be paid back. That's our main policy focus. Debt-free money, not borrowed money, not interest-free money, which is another thing, not low-interest money, but debt-free money. Publicly created money, money created by the government, debt-free. As you know at present, the government borrows money from the banking system, the private banking system, which has the power to create it out of nothing. And then the government asks us to pay that money back in our taxes. Well, what we're saying, and what money reformers in the United Kingdom are concentrating on, is that the government has the power, indeed it has the duty and the responsibility to create a supply of money, debt-free, and spend it, not lend it, into society, instead of running to the banking system for it. And that essentially is the message that we promote and that we take out and that we try to sell to economists, to journalists, to political party activists. And we call this money publicly created money since it's created on behalf of the people of the nation by their elected government. It belongs to the people of the nation and it works to benefit the people of the nation, and it's not intended to benefit the banking system or any private interests, as so much government borrowing does at present. And we refer to it as publicly created money, again, to avoid terminology like government-created money or state-created money, which again can provoke knee-jerk responses. Government-created money? Well, you don't want the government-created money. That's usually the first knee-jerk we get to that. So we drop government-created, drop state-created, publicly created money, because that's what it is. Money created for the people by the public authority, the government. And what's especially good about it is there's a precedent for this in the United Kingdom and also in Canada as well. If we go back to 1948 in Britain, almost half the money in circulation, half the money stock, was publicly created debt-free money, because half the money in circulation was notes and coins. Now, when the government creates notes and coins, what it essentially does is it prints it and sells it to the banking system, which buy them at face value, and the money which the government receives is simply credited to the Treasury as an effective debt-free input. So in 1948, just after the war, half the money in circulation in Britain was publicly created debt-free money. Today, it's about 3%, simply because people use notes and coins less, and because electronic transfers have increased. Well, what we simply say is if the people could get the benefit of a 50% debt-free money stock in 1948, then there's no reason why they can't get the benefit of a 50% debt-free money stock today. Not necessarily through the mechanism of notes and coins, but through an electronic mechanism, for example. And I want to emphasize that we're not, in that particular reform, addressing the ability of the private banks to create money out of nothing. We're talking about money being created in the public sector, not the private sector. Money creation in the private sector is a different matter. We here are addressing the responsibility of the state, the government, to create debt-free money for public needs. Depriving the banks of their ability to create money out of nothing and to enjoy the profit of so doing is an important issue for some people, but it is a slightly more complex matter, which goes beyond publicly created debt-free money, which we emphasise. I mean, some reformers in Britain are saying that banks should only be allowed to lend out money which already exists and has been created by the state. For example, James Robertson and Joseph Huber published this book, Creating New Money, about 4 years ago. James Robertson and John Bunzel have produced another little booklet, a copy might be at the back, addressing that issue, addressing the ability of banks to create money out of nothing, the private banks. But it is a different issue from what the main money reform movement in Britain addresses, which is simply publicly created debt-free money. To the extent that we draw attention to the fact that private banks create money out of nothing, we do so simply to assert this essential first principle. If the private banks can create money out of nothing, then so too can and should the government of the day on behalf of we, the people. And further, since the banks create it out of nothing and lend it to us, the state can and should create it out of nothing and give it to us. Establishing that first principle in practice, having the state creating and issuing debt-free money, is what we believe a workable and attainable first step. It's a reasonable proposition. It's not revolutionary, it's got a precedent. And our opponents find it hard to argue against. And once that reform is up and running, then it could provide a working model which may lead to further changes in time. You could look at it this way. At the moment, the banking system has a virtual monopoly on the creation of money, the private banking system. And our reform, publicly created debt-free money, will simply introduce an element of competition into that arena. So what's the technical way to establish that reform in reality? Well, we've addressed that in Prosperity. We regularly address it. I don't need to address it now, although we've addressed it in the August 2002 issue. I think there's copies at the back. And here it could be done, no doubt, through the Bank of Canada. So how are we promoting that message in Britain, and how successful have we been in it?